Hello and welcome to Pop Screen, the podcast that can't hurt you if you don't think about it. We are that corner of the Geek show that likes to look at the good, the bad and the preposterous of movies either starring by or about pop stars. No, the podcast covers a broad range of musical and cinematic genres, from country and western to hip-hop, from documentaries to science fiction. I'm your host, Graham Williamson. I'm a filmmaker and video artist and a writer for the Geek show and Byline Times. And I've been joined this week by...
Hello, I am Robyn. I am a filmmaker, actress, writer, general she-freak, and just a contributor for Geek Show as well, and recurring podcast guest on Pop Screen.
Yes, I think that the last one we did was maybe worth having a few months off afterwards, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've got to say, we are really breaking tradition with this one.
Yes.
We are decidedly breaking tradition. This is a film which will hurt you, but not in the same way as most of the things we've covered.
Yes, yeah, it won't hurt you in the way that Embrace of the Vampire hurt us.
Embrace of the Vampire did hurt me. I'd not even seen Interview of the Vampire at that point, and it was so funny finally watching that and being like, yo, this is really good. And
yeah,
I now get what Embrace of the Vampire was doing, and Embrace of the Vampire is not good.
Yeah, it doesn't let you. It doesn't give you an insight into what it's doing in a way that might lead you to appreciate the other film.
Yeah, indeed, decidedly so.
But this is like, I mean, we've done films that were good. I enjoyed The Comeback a lot.
The Comeback was pretty good. I quite liked that one.
Yeah. But that was good in a way where you would say it's trashy good fun. And this, I warn you listeners, might be art.
Yeah, it's a small chance maybe.
Yes.
Maybe. We may be doing something a little different today.
We're standing on the brink of quality, looking into its classy abyss.
Although that being said, I think it's going to be hard to beat this for something that we cover, because on previous things we've had funny trashy movie, and this time it's legitimately a film I adore.
Yeah. Same as well, because I mean, at the risk of ruining the cliffhanging suspense of the Geek Show's forthcoming end-of-year review, I think there's an extremely high chance that this is my film of the year.
It is decidedly one of my films of the year. I'm so glad that I've been invited on for this, because I needed the rewatch. Because before saying anything further about I Saw the TV Glow, I might need to provide some context for my viewing of it.
Yes.
So to anybody who's not from the UK, you may have got I Saw the TV Glow earlier, because I Saw the TV Glow infamously almost didn't get a UK release. There was never anything confirmed. It was basically by demand that it got into cinemas. And it did well in UK cinemas. Yeah. But it had to be the distributor had to be demanded to release it. And so finally, I got to see it. I was really excited for this. I was worried I was slightly overhyping it because it sounded just so ideal for me. And that didn't quite prepare me for what I was about to watch, because I am a colossal fan of director Jane Schoenbrun's previous feature, We're All Going to the World's Fair.
Yeah.
This is fairly well known. If you follow me on anything online, that had a very big personal effect upon me. When I watched I Saw the TV Glow, I knew I kind of loved it, but I couldn't process it. because about halfway through, my brain kind of went a bit weird and stopped letting it in. And
Yeah, and that happens sometimes with films that you were scared is going to be a major downer, right? It certainly happens to me.
yeah, and in this case, that led to I saw the TV glow hitting me not just as I watched it, but
Hmm,
several days later continuously. And what I
right.
experienced was a feeling similar to processing grief. That's the only way I can express it
I
because
can buy that.
it just it left a feeling which stuck with me and just got stronger and stronger by the day. And basically, I was thinking a lot has changed since I watched it for the first time. I've been to uni. It's not been easy.
Hmm.
I was kind of thinking, I've been invited on Pop Screen. I'm going to be rewatching it. I'm going to sit down in my uni room and I'm going to rewatch it. And I did. And it just completely washed over me. And I was just like, and now I get it. I already did, kind of, but I needed this rewatch just to fully solidify that. And
I
that's
have
his.
occasionally thought about having like
Yeah,
mental health support for co-hosts. It's just normally because we're making them watch something terrible,
true.
but
True.
in
To
this
be
case,
fair,
yeah.
the idol did make me pretty miserable after having watched it. But in this
Yeah,
case, it is just a movie that has affected me so profoundly on so many levels.
and I think it did me as well. And I think that part of what we'll be doing in this podcast is like almost a classic philosophical dialogue, because I don't want to take anything away from what this movie represents to the trans audience, how important it is to have a trans filmmaker telling something that is a trans allegory but is acknowledged. You know, it's not like Schoenbrun is trying to slip this past the Hays Code. The allegory is their conscious choice. But also, I think it would be a tragedy if cis people didn't watch this film because they thought it wasn't going to say anything to them. Like, I am living proof that if you were watching TV in the 90s while being sad, you will get this film.
Yeah, although I've got to say, there has been a hilarious phenomenon I've come across
Oh,
talking about this film, particularly in the UK. It's
right.
kind of a worldwide thing. When this came out, there was what I like to call the hilarious cis people reading of I Saw the TV Glow. Uh, I Saw the TV Glow is very obviously, even beyond its trans content, a movie which is about learning to embrace yourself. It's
Mm,
about learning not to deny who you are and kind
yeah.
of just that on a basic level in any way to stop repressing who you truly want to be and who will make you happier.
Mm,
And there's been a slightly hilarious thing in a lot of UK newspaper reviewers, but also in some actual film magazines, which seem actively like refusing to thematically deal with this. And the line
right.
that's always used is just, "So yeah, this is a great movie about when you watch a TV show and you like it." And I'm just like, you are actively refusing to deal with the implications of this emotionally.
Yeah,
You just
yeah.
say it's just a movie about what if you saw a TV show and you liked it a lot. I'm just like,
Yeah, there I have seen some remarkably bad reads of this movie. Although I think that a lot of the crapper ones, I'm gonna break it to you. I am so cis that I was like in the car on the way home from seeing this, and I just remember like the thought coming into my head as if it was a voice, like from someone on my shoulder saying, it's kind of a trans allegory as well, isn't it? So, I am aware that this can happen. I'm just lucky that I had a bit of time before I committed my thoughts to video about it.
but as the film says itself, there is still time to get your thoughts together for the podcast.
I love that because the whole film is so ambiguous and so dreamy that I love that Schoenbrun felt so confident. It's like, we could actually just write the message of this film in chalk on the floor in the
30
opening
second
shot.
30 second shot of chalk on the floor saying transition now. Okay, that's actually not what it's saying, but it's funny.
Yes, yeah. But I think like there are parts of this that are sort of porous and are applicable to a lot of things. Like I know that whole area of, there are a lot of trans people I know and who and whose quality writing I read online, Robyn. So I am aware that kind of worry about, is it too late? Have I held off transitioning too long? Is it an anxiety that a lot of people feel? But it's also like, if you were under 50, you probably grew up with a scale for when your life's goals should be met that is now completely fucking impossible because of capitalism. And so you can look at it this way. It's not the quote unquote right way. It's not what Schoenbrun was expecting, but there are like ways to emotionally approach the film if you have not experienced what they are specifically talking about, I think.
It's really quite moving in that regard because I think it's a really interesting movie, and I think this is an explicit part of it, of anxieties about aging.
Yeah, yeah,
Particularly aging as a queer person, as a trans person. But I feel like that plays into it really, really nicely. And I think that I've seen a bunch of really bad, like brain dead online takes about some of the message saying that the film says something it doesn't. But I think those 4 words, there is still time, do so much and
yeah.
convey just so much of what the film wants to say. I mean, it's kind of by the end, it's like, there is still time, but you won't have forever. But
That's a good way of putting it. Yes, yeah. I think Schoenbrun said that they don't like endings that are either the overtly happy or overtly sad. And apparently, Justice Smith, the lead actor, said they did shoot a version of the ending where Owen realizes what they have to do, but
I'm
they
aware of the
couldn't.
ending.
Yeah,
I upon rewatch, I did notice. I did notice when I found out how it would have ended, and I'd have been happy if it ended this way. But I feel like it's kind of perfect how it does end. But with this original ending, it's not like an egregious, out there, solid ending.
hmm,
And you can tell slightly in the final shot, you can think, this shot looks like it's ongoing, and that's not
yes,
just a design thing. The shot actually did go on longer,
yeah.
but I like that it's cut off because I feel like it hits harder with what the film's trying to say and with the note it's trying to leave you on.
I
I
think,
feel like that works better
yeah.
in its favor.
I think because queer stories are often themed around coming out, it's very easy to end them in a way that sort of wraps everything up and makes everything feel packaged and perfect and resolved. And, you know, part of the problem is that, like, if I was a young queer person today, I would be delighted by the amount of queer media around, but I would also watch most of it and think, what am I supposed to do for like the 60 years of my life after I come out? What happens then? I think I saw the TV Glow ending at the point it does kind of passes the baton back to the viewer. It
Yeah.
makes you take it out into reality and say, okay, so what are you going to do if you feel frustrated
Yes.
like this? What's your answer?
It's I mean, the ending, but it ends at a very specific second, which will be kind of the most heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But there's still hope to it, I think. I think there is, but
Mm.
it's not just hope within the context of the film. It is kind of, as you've said, it is saying to the viewer, it's just like, if you feel like this, you should consider how you would act in this situation, what decision you would make.
Yeah.
And I really do
I
appreciate that.
I am aware that there are people who get very annoyed when critics misuse the word Brechtian, and they're probably right to do so. But it is within that ethos of using the drama
Yes,
to
I would
make
agree.
you act. Yeah.
And this is all talking about a profoundly affecting, wonderful movie which intentionally features a prominent full-screen clip of transmorphers in one scene, which I had not forgotten about. That stuck out to me. I love that one of the ways in which it suggested that this is a horrible, broken, awful alternate world is the film playing on the cinema screen is Transmorphers. It's just meant to make you feel horrible because it's just an alternate universe nightmare cinema.
I actually did not realize the first time I watched it that that's where it was from, and even then it worked for me. I thought, oh right, we're so far into Jane Schoenbrun's world that all of the movie theaters are just showing like vaporwave pad CGI.
It's great. It's just some guy monologuing about like the survivors became primitive apes and ate each other and stuff over like some CG robot like rendered horrendously in like some early 90s CG demo spawn hell scene type thing.
Well, it's very good that you mentioned the 90s because that, and specifically like that late 90s turn of the millennium moment is so much of what the film is drawing from. I mean, one of its key pop music connections is that Owen, the Justice Smith character's dad, is played by Fred Durst.
Fred Durst, indeed.
Who saw that redemption arc coming.
Yeah, after the Fanatic and all.
And we've done the Fanatic on the Patreon feed this year, so
I've not seen it yet, but it scares me.
I am resistant, let me say that much, to giving 5 stars to a movie starring Fred Durst. I have been burned, and yet here we are.
And he appears, and he is impressively horrible at it. Like he doesn't says very little, but he just conveys just so much of a horrible, awful feeling. The worst part is that, as Jane Schoenbrun has acknowledged, it was pointed out that he looks like J.D. Vance in it. It's really, really, really upsetting.
Yeah, no, that's very true, and I think it has an obvious symbolic importance because if you were, as I was, a teenager around the turn of the millennium, Fred Durst is all of our shitty fathers. You know, he's the shitty father to a generation. So it does impress you that he was willing to be in on the joke here.
Yeah, I really, really am impressed by it. It's quite amazingly done. And there is a scene, the first scene where we see him, he's referenced beforehand, but there's kind of an unease around it.
Yeah.
It's clear that I believe when Owen / Isabel, as we will get onto likely.
Oh yes, yes.
Will be when they talk to their mum about kind of, can I stay up and watch the Pink Opaque? There's a reference almost to, I don't know, maybe you should ask your dad. It's like, can you ask him for me? And you already get a suggestion that something's a bit off. And then the line happens, which might be his only line in the film. I think this is his only line in the film, and it's instant fight or flight panic mode when he says it. He just casually says it in the car after Owen says, can I watch the Pink Opaque later on? And there's just a pause, and then you hear, isn't that a show for girls? And they instantly just feel nightmare.
Yeah, and I hope this is getting across to listeners how economical Schoenbrun screenplays. You know, it's very easy when you're a filmmaker with this much of a sense of visual style and you have this kind of arsenal of cool needle drops that we will get into. It's very easy to just slack off on the actual screenwriting part of it, but this has a fantastic script.
It's phenomenal. There are specific phrases in it which will stick with me forever, because they're just so perfectly worded.
Yeah.
There's a moment where Justice Smith sat on like the bleachers at the high school, says, "I feel like my insides have been dug out with a shovel, and I know that there's something missing, but I don't want to look." It's
I'm
something
too
along those
afraid
lines.
to open myself up. Yeah.
And it's stuff like that. Or there's like, do you like girls? I don't know. Do you like boys? I think I like TV shows. Awkward giggle. It's just, oh my, there's so much of it. But even just stuff like, I thought to myself, this isn't how life is supposed to feel. It's just all of these lines really, really hit me hard. And it's great because Jane Schoenbrun also has a very clear understanding of like internet humor and so forth, and the type of stupid things which will make me laugh. So this happens in We're All Going to the World's Fair as well. Both films are incredibly bleak. We're All Going to the World's Fair is probably bleaker because it just has such horrible, awful implications of what could have happened. But occasionally in these, there's just like a shot of some goofy thing on the screen of like some stick figures running about just in each of these, or just some very silly line. I have to mention the suit party. I know it comes later on in the film, but I need to mention that there is a single shot which, in the middle of one of the most heartbreaking moments in the film, I started wheezing with laughter in that stupid frowny face of the ice cream man, Mr. Sprinkly, flips upside down. I could not stop wheezing with laughter in the cinema.
We need to explain, I think, what the pink opaque is and what it metaphorically is, because we're kind of bringing it into the podcast here.
I'm realizing that we haven't introduced what I Saw the TV Glow is, and it's currently giving off a slight La Fan Absolue du Monde from John Carpenter's Cigarette Burns vibe. It's an unknowable film that just ruins you. I think I made too much of an assumption.
Yeah.
I think I made too much of an assumption here that people listening will know what I Saw the TV Glow is. And yeah, so yeah.
But it's about two people who really like TV.
It's about two people who really like TV. It's very true. Yeah. And the pink opaque, right, get this. I'm going to mess up my haircut. I'm going to sit down on the floor. I'm going to explain this to you whilst it's like, right, so guys, the pink opaque is about, it's about two girls called Isabel and Tara, and Isabella's the scaredy one, and you can watch it. You can watch it at my house. You can watch it. We can be friends and talk about the pink opaque. It's okay if you don't understand it.
It's not for kids. It's not for kids.
Really, it's not a kids show.
Scary.
I know it's on the Young Adult Network, but it's not a show for kids. It's real scary. You shouldn't show it to kids.
I mean, there are, if you like have any experience with 90s and early noughties fantasy television, you will recognize a lot of reference points in the pink opaque as Owen and Maddie become more fixated on it. But the big thing is that it is very, very heavily patterned on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes, I am very, very much aware. And there is a point which had to be made that after it came out, people started complaining about when they show the season 5 finale to the pink opaque in universe, which ends on a very dark, horrible note, like unbelievably bleak. People said, surely a show like that for teens in the 90s wouldn't end like that. And people were just like, actually, season 5 of Buffy kind of ends that way. And also, Jim Henson's dinosaurs ended on them all dying in the Ice Age, which was specifically invoked by Jane Schoenbrun as what happened. That was a partial inspiration, was just at the end of Jim Henson's dinosaurs, when the show got cancelled, they all fucking freeze to death.
But I think one of the film's great successes is you get so many little glimpses at the pink opaque. There's this wonderful scene which is like, on one level, it's the shot that has to be in every American high school movie, where the main character is just walking through the corridors past these endless lockers. But here it is overlaid with all of the things that Maddie is sending him to help him fuel his pink opaque fandom, which is full of like perfectly on brand details, like they're repeating the pilot next Saturday. It's a mythology episode and stuff like this.
Yeah. It's very specific phrases used, like big bad and monster of the week
Yes.
throughout, which just made me smile
Yeah.
just watching it. There's all sorts going on there, which is wonderful. The episode guide being so focal,
Yeah.
and Owen only finding out about the episodes via the guide before actually watching them,
Yes.
is an experience which kind of made me feel like I'd been kicked in the head and not realized it yet by Jane Schoenbrun personally, because that was my experience with one of my favorite shows, which I developed a great obsession with when younger, that took over my life, which is Doctor Who. Doctor Who
Yes.
was my pink opaque, but I watched far too little of it until I was like 11, 12. Because I just caught all of this. I knew every detail of every episode just from like reading episode guides. And this was a weirdly familiar experience to me. But that moment walking through the hallways is interesting for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of details you can find out about the show. In fact, hilariously, there are plenty of Google Docs compiled by insane pink opaque fans now in the real world trying to piece together the show.
Excellent.
It's wonderful. I have come across this, and it's phenomenal. Just the amount of effort that goes into it. But one of the things that I noticed, and this might be getting ahead of myself here, because I'm getting into music here.
Okay, good.
That scene features a song where a large amount of the song is played. One of the big deals with I Saw the TV Glow is its music. This was a big part of We're All Going to the World's Fair as well, because even though that less prominently features actual musicians in it, like there's a brief cameo from May Leeds, but there's a big deal with that, in that before We're All Going to the World's Fair came out, a massive deal was made of its score, which was out beforehand, which was done by Alex G.
Yeah.
And that got really popular before the film was even released. And in this case, by pure coincidence, the score for I Saw the TV Glow was released early and got really popular before that.
Yeah.
And there's Alex G is on that as well, but the song that stands out to me plays just in that scene of Owen walking through the corridor, and that is Starburned and Unkissed by Caroline Polachek.
Yeah.
I heard that for the first time in the film, in the cinema, and it kind of felt like, in the midst of me being at the verge of tears, watching all of this stuff and seeing this feels too familiar to me. Suddenly, this song, which is just full of just this raw emotion, it felt like the speakers like shredded my body just whilst watching it, because it just flows through you and you can't stop it.
I've been listening to the soundtrack in preparation for this episode. It is fantastic, but it is
so good.
Conceptually, it is very interesting to me because, of course, this is not just a 90s styled movie. Large parts of this are set in the 90s. It's not specific about what year exactly, but you can't mistake it. There's a Fruitopia vending machine.
There is a Fruitopia vending machine, but I think that narrows it down slightly. I do love the Fruitopia vending machine because what I think it's explicitly conveying there is, this is Fruitopia. You can't get it anymore. You can't go back.
Yeah. Yes. This is also like hilarious to me because like it reminds you that the 90s were the only decade which could possibly have felt the need for new age soda.
It's so true. It's so
Doesn't
true.
happen in any other era of human history.
I know this is slightly off tangent, but we need to talk about Void High School.
VHS.
VHS. We need to talk about VHS. That made me so, so happy because basically everything in the world of I Saw the TV Glow has a very specific point, which the film only explicitly points out later on, exists basically within the rules and logic of the Pink Opaque, the show.
Yeah.
Everything you see is essentially a dressed set, if you think about it too much. And Void High School makes a lot of sense the more you watch it, but particularly in that scene with the tracking shot throughout the hallways, you see these motivational quotes on the walls, which say things like, "To thine own self be true." And
pain is just weakness leaving the body.
That's the one, which, funnily enough, this isn't the only film where pain is weakness leaving the body. Is put on a billboard prominently in a room from this year.
It's not even the only queer film of
Indeed.
2024 where this happens, isn't it?
Because I saw that and I was just like, well, one, that rules. And secondly, Love Lies Bleeding has that billboard. That was something which stuck out to me. There's a lot going on there. It's just very, very impressive. And it's impressive how seriously it manages to play all of this within its own logic. A testament to its success is there is a scene later on where Bridget Lundy Payne turns to the camera and says, "I shat and pissed myself in my pants," directly to the camera, and not a single person in my screening laughed.
Yes.
And that is testament to how impressive it is. Because it just conveys this tone which breaks you after a certain point.
And that's a fantastic scene, because it's like the film is so visual that when you have that long monologue, you do think, oh, this is operating on a slightly different level now, when I'm not sure how the film wants me to take that, which is exactly what it needs to do at that point. That's the moment of like maximum ambiguity in the film where it could go any way.
Indeed. And that kind of has a payoff later on with a scene with almost no dialogue by intent, because the payoff to this is the biggest reveal we get as to what's actually going on. And it is a scene which has become a bit infamous online now because it is just the hardest thing to watch ever, which is the scene where an older Justice Smith breaks down at a birthday party.
Yes.
And this is the moment which pretty explicitly conveys to you, this is happening.
Yes. Now, in terms of what is happening, a lot of people have been confused. I feel a lot of people have gone to like ending explained videos and things like that, which is, fair. I am old-fashioned. I kind of feel like you should fight your own way through a film, but I understand the appeal of them. And I think part of what I got from the way that the Pink Opaque is treated, it's twofold. There are two reference points I can make to it. Firstly, I felt like Jane Schoenbrun was reverse engineering the end of Twin Peaks: The Return.
I think that's one has been explicitly said by Jane Schoenbrun. I'm not certain.
They have talked about having a recurrent nightmare about the ending of season 2 of Twin Peaks, which is understandable. It's fucking terrifying. But the end of Twin Peaks: The Return has that implication where some people come to the door of the Palmer house, and online sleuths somehow found out that these are the people who own the Laura Palmer house in reality. And the strong implication is that by interfering in Laura Palmer's timeline, Agent Cooper has trapped him and Laura in our world rather than the TV world that they were in. And one way to read I Saw the TV Glow is it's this backwards. It's about people who live in an ostensibly real world, our world, where they have Fruitopia vending machines in the 90s, just like they did, who actually find out that no, we have somehow slipped here from a supposedly TV world that is in fact real.
Indeed. It's kind of, I do some comparisons. Some people have disparagingly made comparisons to The Matrix, but I think that's a wonderful comparison because it basically posits the idea, what if Neo took the blue pill?
Yes!
This is essentially what the film is running on, except consciously transverse time. As opposed to Lana and Lily Wachowski realized partway through making The Matrix, yo, I think we've got some unresolved stuff to figure out.
Yes, yeah. So that's part of it. I was also kind of reminded of that idea that Alan Moore talks about, where he sort of says that he can visualize ideas as a physical space, that things like Christianity or Marxism or materialism are like continents that have their own geography to him. And I think before we get that monologue and before we realise that the pink opaque might have some reality in the world of the film, there's a sense that the pink opaque is already a kind of space where Maddie and Owen can go to explore a kind of queer identity that isn't available to them in their day-to-day life.
Which I think is interesting because it is very much about queer kids bonding over weird little TV shows that they watch and kind of finding connections.
Can't relate.
Can't relate. Can't relate. Not true. Didn't happen.
Yeah. And Maddie explicitly says that she's been bullied because the other kids have worked out she's a lesbian. Owen refuses to be drawn about his sexual identity in any way. As you say, he's like, I like TV shows. I don't know if I like boys or girls. But what you have in the pink opaque is this fantasy world where you have two aspirational women, two strong, glamorous women who have a psychic connection that is not explicitly queer, but at the same time, you watch it and you think, if this was actually on in the 80s, every single lesbian who's in their 40s now would just be unable to talk about anything else other than the pink.
They'd have the tattoo. The tattoo. People have started getting the tattoo already of the ghost, and it's wonderful. In fact, there is a prominent scene which I had forgotten was in it until the rewatch, where Maddie draws the marking on the back of the neck from the pink opaque on Owen's neck, and it's a wonderful scene. Whereupon they, as soon as they get home, immediately wash it off in kind of embarrassment.
Yes.
Which is just a heart-wrenching moment, but there's a strange kind of melancholy beauty to it. And speaking of melancholy, and the infinite sadness, this was not lost on me. This was not lost on me.
Yes, the villain of the pink opaque is called Mr. Melancholy, which, I mean, this shows you that there is a slight difference between my 90s music collection and Jane Schoenbrun's, because I thought, like a sort of gender-flipped version of Elliott Smith's Miss Misery. No.
This is very, very explicitly, in fact, through a song later on, because Tonight is covered on the soundtrack, a beautiful cover. I'm not sure it's on the album.
But it is, we should point out, it is by Snail Mail, the musical alias of Lindsay Jordan, who plays Tara in the pink opaque.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a whole bunch of musicians just in it, just throughout. Phoebe Bridgers notably shows up in one scene.
I had heard about that. I was surprised by the Snail Mail thing because I really love that last Snail Mail album. Ben Franklin is an absolute banger, such a great song. But I certainly knew that Phoebe Bridgers was in it because Phoebe Bridgers news to the internet is like a small droplet of blood in a tank full of piranhas.
It's true. Yeah, it's people. When I heard that, I mean, it was between that and Emma Stone is producing. People just kind of forgot that happened. Uh,
Yeah.
that was after loving kind of the festival indie darling that was We're All Going to the World's Fair. I was just like, whoa, that's big.
Big time. Yeah.
I sure hope they get good distribution. I sure hope
Yeah.
A24 doesn't fuck it up.
Yeah, We're All Going to the World's Fair it's a sort of film where on one hand it's a very impressive debut, but on the other hand it is so homemade and off the map that part of you thinks, I wonder if the creator of this will ever do anything again. So it's nice that Emma Stone put her double Oscar winner muscle behind this.
Yeah, it's exceptionally wonderful. And the funniest part is that on the TV, occasionally, you can see. So basically, for anyone who doesn't know about the extended Jane Schoenbrun lore of what there is, Jane Schoenbrun used to run a kind of internet magazine thing, a kind of video series called The Eye Slicer, which shared a bunch of short films, and there were screenings of it and stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of interesting things came of that. For the Geek Show, I recently reviewed something called Girl Internet Show,
Mhm.
which is a mixtape curated partially by Jane Schoenbrun of the work of a filmmaker who sadly died tragically young, who was mostly known for sending films through to the Eye Slicer.
Yeah.
And you'll see other stuff like Brian Lanano did a bunch of stuff, like William originally was an Eye Slicer. I think if anybody knows about that, there was the bizarre Great Choice Red Lobster horror movie
Right.
was originally released by the Eye Slicer, and notably there was an animated film called Tux and Fanny,
Okay.
and that's shown on the TV more than once in I Saw the TV Glow.
Ah,
It was an animated short which has got a bit of a cult online following, and originally it was going to feature more. There were going to be
right.
original scenes done in the style of it, but with the characters overtly representing Owen and Maddie.
Oh, interesting. Right, this all kind of sailed over my head because the first I heard of Jane Schoenbrun was We're All Going to the World's Fair. I doubled back recently, partly in preparation for this show, and watched Self-Induced Hallucination.
Which I still need to see because I think that will hit really personally for me as my own coming of age, and the reason why We're All Going to the World's Fair hits so personally was kind of being closeted, shut-in teen, still figuring myself out, and kind of observing internet creepypasta and kind of weird YouTube horror stuff,
It
and it
does, yeah,
was a
it
prominent
feels
obsession of mine.
it does feel kind of generational, really. That when I saw We're All Going to the World's Fair, I admired it a lot, but it didn't rip me up like I saw the TV Glow did. And I think that is partly because by the time the kind of online phenomena of creepypasta and the Momo challenge and sort of online
That
hoaxes
one's a
like
little
that.
bit too late for me, but
Yeah. But the whole
I
thing
get
was
what
a
you
bit
mean.
the whole thing was a bit too late for me, which was the issue. But
Can't
self-induced
wait for in 20
hallucination.
years there'll be like Jane Schoenbrun making a movie about like I don't know Skibbity Toilet or something.
Well, they could get hired for the Michael Bay Skibbity
They could,
Toilet
yeah.
movie, which
Honestly,
is a thing that
I'm surprised that Harmony Korine didn't get his hands on it first. I'm
Hey,
really surprised. But we could have done it on pop screen probably. It'd probably have Travis Scott's head come out of the toilet.
speaking of Harmony Korine, I thought the credits for the Pink Opaque were slightly Korine coded. It felt like one of those short short films, he made more than it did an
It's very
actual
true.
90s show.
Are we talking curb dancing?
I wasn't thinking. What's the one? Maybe I am. I can't remember what the title of it was, but I went through a bit of a stage of watching Korine shorts about 10 years ago.
I'm mildly obsessed with curb dancing. It's out of all of them, out of all of the Korine shorts that I have seen, that is the one which just stuck with me most. Just because
Watch that or watch
it's
it
just Harmony Korine in a dress tap dancing on like the pavement, whilst the voiceover just says, "Yo, I was introduced to this by my brothers, but they're on death row now because they shot a man." I'm just like, it's just wonderful. It's borderline Shay St. John, Eric Fournier stuff, which I always bring up Shay St. John when I get the opportunity, because that is a weird thing which I've fitted into things. I don't know if I will ever get to explain Shay St. John to anyone ever who isn't aware of who Eric Fournier is.
This is getting slightly into the weeds, I think. But
we're getting real like out there. Although to be fair,
for the heads.
Whatever Jane Schoenbrun does next, they'll probably directly implicate Shay St. John or something. It's decidedly the same kind of brand of things. It's just this random middle-aged man making videos of himself dressed in mannequin parts, playing a character called Shay St. John, and he just walk down the street and shout about things and like have 5 million seizure-inducing edits. I'm obsessed with it. I think I named a character in something after this wondrous figure, this internet icon, and it is pure we're all going to the World's Fair type vibes.
Let's just sort of
return.
talk. Let's return, but let's also talk about how this film uses its 90s-ness, because I think that is part of the importance of it, is that an ordinary film, when it wants to convince you that it's made in the 90s, would bring in the 90s needle drops. And of course, the fact that you're supposed to question whether the world that Maddie and Owen are in is the real world is part of the reason why Schoenbrun doesn't here. But the most exciting thing about it is that they've got together this like group of mostly queer indie artists and given them directions to make something that is 90s in mood and tone, but not, apart from that one Smashing Pumpkins cover, not of the 90s. And I think that is so fascinating and such a pointer to how, I mean, can I be bold? I'm going to say that this film is the solution to nostalgia culture.
I agree.
They have found the way to fix this endless sort of, because I think it's a significant problem.
Yes, agreed.
The mainstream sort of media, Hollywood sort of television streaming complex is always telling you can go back to your childhood. You can get new things that are going to be just like it. We'll bring all the original stars back and it'll be exactly the same. And I think part of the reason why you have such a problem with toxic fandom is that that's an impossible promise. But the people who these things are targeted to don't realize that it's an impossible promise. They get the thing. It's not making them feel like a child because they're not children. But they don't know why that is, and they become sort of angry and dissatisfied by everything. It seems there's like no ceiling to what they can be angry about. And part of I Saw the TV Glow is about that thing of, you can't move back. There is still time, but the only way that there can still be time is if you move forward.
Indeed, I think that's a very important part of it, and I need to bring up. So on YouTube, I thought this was a joke, but they're totally real. On YouTube, somebody uploaded deleted scenes from I Saw the TV Glow, which are from the Blu-ray, I believe.
Right.
And they are interesting, but many of them were cut for being too funny. and
Right.
being too much of a distraction. And
Yeah.
one of them features a clip, which it was kind of like it was cut because they're like it's possibly too funny, and also you get the point. So there's a whole thing going on throughout I Saw the TV Glow of when characters are children, apart from one specific point in time, they are played by adults speaking like children.
Yeah.
And it is the sort of thing which really, really works with the way it's conveyed here,
Yeah.
which is better when you see them get older, and occasionally there's very little difference in the dialogue. And
Yeah.
that's really the kind of thing which kind of punches you in like the liver, basically, just
Yeah.
repeatedly, because you just realize, oh no, they're aging faster than they can manage.
Yeah.
And but there was a detail where there was meant to be a clip taken from the Pink Opaque in it, where a 20-something-year-old man in a propeller hat was one of the children. And,
But
and
the age of the characters in the Pink Opaque unexpectedly becomes a really important part of that kind of core message of the film, because when Maddie and Owen are watching it as when they're children, they see the characters as two. The central characters are seen as two sort of glamorous, older, self-possessed, confident women. One of whom is Snail Mail. And then later on, Owen watches it when he's an adult, and the show has been completely reshot. He's clearly watching the same episode that he was watching it at the start, but the effects are worse, the style is goofier, and crucially, the central characters are played by child actors. And I
yes,
think
I picked
that's
up on that.
it's such a fantastic way to get across that, what has shifted here is not that the show has actually changed, or indeed, to bring it back to that toxic fandom thing, it's not that they've rebooted it and it's become woke. It's not like, what
Maybe when I do
you
the woke reboot of the Pink Opaque. To be fair,
they've made it slightly gay. What the hell is this?
you can read the entirety of I Saw the TV Glow as season 6, episode 1 of the Pink Opaque.
I love how just the word season 6 become totemic in it, like
They do.
one of the other 90s TV things they threw back to was being a Doctor Who fan in the wilderness years and having people say the words season 27 in the same voice that, like, people used to say the mythical lost city of gold.
So true. It's so true. It's although I've got to say in this case, it has been suggested that the film does become slightly funny if you view it through the lens of imagine sitting down and learning, oh, there's going to be the new Netflix reboot of the Pink Opaque. Let me sit down and watch this 1 hour 40-minute first episode. Wow, this episode's depressing.
But that's one of the things that I think reboot culture never does, and is one of the reasons why Twin Peaks: The Return is so special, because that is a series that is unafraid to say, isn't it sad that 25 years has passed? People have died who were involved in the original series, and reboot culture is so often about running as fast as you can from that essential truth.
Very few things hurt in this film more than the time skips, because they
Yes.
just get longer. That is one of the important details of the film, is that there are about 4 separate time skips, and each of them is greater in length than the
Yeah.
previous one. And when the final one hits you with the title card reading 20 years later,
You just think,
uh,
oh shit.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And for all this film truly loves television and is very respectful towards the television shows that inspired it, I also think that's a real that's a real statement in favour of what film can do. I can imagine someone saying that this film should be a TV series, and then we could see it all and have all of the information about what the pink opaque is and see what the characters are doing in these time skips. No, I think the compression of it and that brutal series of time jumps is part of why it works so well.
I mean, there's the explicit point made that suddenly I'm 21. It's like time has skipped over like a chapter on a DVD.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
the changing formats. That's an important thing, which not many people will notice, probably.
Yeah.
People casually refer to different formats of home media throughout it, because it begins with tapes, and the tapes are referenced throughout. But
Not least in the
casually.
name of the school.
Oh, indeed, yeah. Obviously. But there's casual references to DVD throughout, which are very hard to pick up on unless you're looking for them. But there is the explicit line mentioned of it feels like chapters have been skipped on a DVD, and it's just mentioned offhand, and it just conveys some of the passage of time, and then it's explicitly brought up when we enter the streaming era with it, and Owen watches The Pink Opaque on Netflix.
Yeah.
Or unspecified streaming service, probably.
Yes, yeah. I don't think this is necessarily what Schoenbrun is intending, because I don't think they're like as sort of... I don't think they're as rosy-eyed about the past as this implies, but I do think you can read it as being like, look at how hard Owen had to fight to get hold of videotapes and information about the Pink Opaque and how much he loved it back then. And now he's just got this menu, which is like season 1, season 2, season 3, 4, 5. And he watches it again and thinks, oh, this is crap.
That is an effect that can be brought up because recently I was on a podcast about the X-Files.
Yes. I am currently finishing my X-Files project at the moment. So
when I was watching it through, I realized that maybe watching it all episode after episode was not the ideal way to watch it, even though I was required to, because it's decidedly a different experience to have to wait week by week for a new episode than it is to watch a lot of very, very similar, but generally pretty consistently neat episodes where you're just like, this wasn't meant to be watched all as one. This really wasn't designed that way.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I recently on the Geek Show's Patreon I did the final episode of the original run of the X-Files, The Truth, and I was looking up some reviews from the time to give me context of it, and it was fascinating that one of them said something like, oh, Carter can't possibly answer all these questions, like who are these conspirators and what's their agenda? And I just thought, what the fuck are you talking about? I can't think of a question he has answered more often than that. But I am watching all of the mythology episodes over like about a year and a half. I can imagine that if you've like watched 9 seasons of this over 9 years, you would be sat there scratching your head going, wait a minute, who's in charge of the super soldiers again?
I've got to say, having watched through all of X-Files season 1, it's kind of a strange experience just watching it all at once, because it's kind of, funny aliens vaguely implied every episode. Let's go along, one after the other, and then suddenly Beyond the Sea hits you in the middle of all of it, and it's kind of just like feels like Brad Dourif ran out and like just stabbed you and then runs off, and then I think the next episode is like the Dodgy Trans one, which is really, really funny.
But that's also something that you have a lot with, particularly with old Doctor Who, where it's like, we will have an episode that is quite a somber drama set during the Crusades with no science fiction elements. And before that, everyone is either an ant or a butterfly.
It's so true. It's Doctor Who is consistently like this, particularly in those earlier years. There's there's a whole lot of stuff where kind of I did attempt to do a watch through from the beginning, which I need to get back into. But there is a whole lot of the last episode was kind of a concept which they did some things with, but the episode was largely about people tweaking in the TARDIS. And immediately it's followed by 8 separate episodes of Yellowface. And this is, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. maybe this was a bad idea.
But this, and by this I mean the tonal stuff, not the yellow face stuff.
Yeah. I can't remember the pink opaque episode where someone did yellow face. That was really bad.
If the pink opaque was real and it was a real 90s show, one of the things that they would have to add is an episode that now actually looks really racially dodgy. One of they need their equivalent of the Buffy episode with the Native American ghost.
There genuinely would be. But Mr. Melancholy would say a slur. To be honest, he probably does in it. He probably does in the episode, in the film. Mr. Melancholy, I've got to say, when we first see him properly as a full-bodied entity, because previously there is a very specific visual reference being made, which some people will have picked up on and some people won't have. And some people who will think they picked up on it will like, oh, look, it's a trip to the moon. Not quite right. This is, in fact, an explicit reference to the music video for Tonight by the Smashing Pumpkins.
Sure is. Yeah.
Which is really interesting, which technically almost beat for beat riffs on A Trip to the Moon. So I can't really say anything. But when we see the full-bodied Mr. Melancholy, which is the most intense special effects, I think, in the film, the biggest use of CG. There's so much going on there to the point that I struggle to figure out how some of it was done. As soon as you see that figure sitting there, to anyone who's seen Prince of Darkness and has seen the dream sequences in that, I first saw Prince of Darkness in a cinema, and when I saw the kind of nightmare transmission sequences, they made me physically shake in my chair at just how terrified I was, just this primal fear. That is the feeling I got when I saw Mr. Melancholy for the first time, because that is just the most... It's just primal nightmare, Mr. Nosy Bonk if he was homophobic, kind of appearance that you see, kind of vaguely visible. It's just horrendous. The amount of Bear and the Big Blue House references I've seen where people have just said, can't remember, who remembers when the moon said you won't even remember you're dying.
But it's that is another aspect of Pink Opaque that is really sort of well observed in terms of how it draws from 90s shows, because one of the big duties of shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Doctor Who is that they are meant to introduce the kids to Lovecraftian horror. That's just a sacred function of them. And that's definitely there in the physical appearance of Mr. Melancholy.
I've got to say, I would not drink the Luna juice. I would not drink it. It doesn't look UK food standards approved.
It's not. No, this is like the stuff that we're getting from America after Brexit has freed us from all of those pesky EU health regulations.
Somebody online said the Luna juice was just the grimmest shake for people with they, them pronouns. And that upset me deeply. And somebody else said Larry Cohen's the stuff. It's just utterly just foul. It's awful. I think it's that stuff that Luke Skywalker was drinking in The Last Jedi.
Yes, it is.
It's just regardless of whether or not it like knocks you out and sends you to like a hell dimension, it just looks bad.
It does, yeah. And it's horrible because you know that the Pink Opaque absolutely did have fast food tie-ins in this universe.
I'm gonna mention it. I'm gonna mention the deleted scene if you don't know about this.
Oh, please do. Yeah,
There was a deleted scene where somebody, a character says, "I may." This scene was deleted because it was considered too silly and broke the tone too much. But this happened. This explicitly happened. There was a moment where one of the characters says, "I'm sorry, I've sold you all out to Mr. Melancholy. I made a wish. I wished for the one thing I wanted most. Oh no, what did you wish for?" And it immediately cuts to an advert of a character holding up a Big Mac.
So I'm canonically right.
You're canonically right. This was in an actual deleted scene from it. There was fast food tie-ins to the Pink Opaque.
I'm so happy. It's again such a 90s thing, like toy and fast food tie-ins for things that were absolutely wrong for children.
So
I still
true.
remember being in Toys R Us and seeing the Alien 3 toy line in there.
One toy line that gives you depression.
Yes, if you play with the Pink Opaque toys for too long, you do get gender dysphoria.
You do stick your head in the telly. It does
Yes.
happen.
You do wake up and find that Fred Durst is your dad.
Pulling you out of like the charred remains of the television and washing you and cooling you down in a toilet.
Which it turns out is Skibbity.
Oh, makes you think.
Yeah.
Makes you think. I'm in the Midnight Realm. Help me, help me, help me.
But yeah, it's one of those sort of lovely unstressed points at the end where the older Owen's working in that arcade and everything is just Pink Opaque branded, and you think, well, is that because he's in the Pink Opaque, or is it just because he's in a culture which trades off shitty nostalgia all the time?
Yeah.
Like, what's the difference anymore?
And there's a couple of things I need to mention about that. One of which is that in these horribly depressing scenes, there is a small production detail which you can almost not notice without pausing. And I noticed it in the cinema, but other people, everyone else I was with, didn't notice this. There is one of his kind of money-catching arcade machines things, and at the top there is some text on it, which explicitly says in block capitals, "You are dying."
Jesus, I didn't notice that.
I know. It's kind of hard to pick up because it's only seen in full for about a second. But it is there, present. And the worst part, it's so clearly meant to be a coffin.
I was far too distracted thinking about the crystal maze by that.
Crystal maze. It is genuinely... is meant to resemble the image of someone suffocating, because this is Isabel's real kind of body within like the Pink Opaque, and it's really, really unsettling. But secondly, on a really funny detail, is the utterly horrible, despicable man, which is the boss who employs Owen, is played by Connor O'Malley, who is, for anyone who knows, an incredibly funny, absurdist YouTube comedian who is also well known for appearing in one scene of Bodies, Bodies, Bodies for no apparent reason. He's there in the final scene of the film for no reason other than that he's a funny man. And I didn't know this until I saw the things he'd done on YouTube, including the 10-minute masterpiece, which is rebranded Mickey Mouse. Which opens with a man in the woods dressed as Mickey Mouse eating dirt and ends with the nuclear annihilation of the entire globe, and is somehow incredibly well written, and there is a natural progression to this point. I
can see why Jane Schoenbrun sought that guy out.
And this guy just shows up. He also noticeably co-wrote and was in charge of the Joe Pera things for Adult Swim. which is largely what he is known for outside of that. But yeah, he's in there as this horrendous figure because it's just, I think Jane Schoenbrun just thought it would be funny to have this weird YouTube guy who made the YouTube video known as smoking 500 cigarettes for 5G. normal filmmaker man. But I kind of freaks out when he's introduced in one scene halfway through the film with his pants down, and I was just like, oh shit, that's Connor O'Malley. What's he doing here? This is going to get real bad real fast.
This is like what normies felt like when they saw Bo Burnham in Promising Young Woman, except
it genuinely gave off that impression.
Yeah, except in the context of a movie that is really good.
It's possibly, I'm not sure if it's more or less shocking than the male leads, aka Nick Spears cameo in We're All Going to the World's Fair.
Well, that sailed totally over my head, so yes.
In which, about 40 minutes from the end, there is a random clip of a trans woman who has, through the power of the World's Fair Challenge, grown wings. And that makes absolutely, it has nothing to do with anything. It's just funny, and she's just a fairly niche like trans musician on the internet who occasionally makes video essays about things like Phantom of the Paradise and so forth. Who is in a minute-long, if not less, sequence in the film. Who just appears for 30 seconds as like, and I'm just like, is that who I think it is?
I like the idea that Jane Schoenbrun became a filmmaker to force festival audiences to watch all her favourite weird YouTubers.
It's true. It's true, to be fair. To be fair, that's kind of how I cast the voice cast for the Eastern Gospel. I just found a bunch of people that I wanted to, you included, who I just wanted to randomly include in it, just so that people might not even know where all of the kind of people come from that I cast them out seeing, that it is basically just a bunch of kind of people I thought I need to get them in here somehow just so that they can be there. So you've got like both creators of like the YouTube series Fart House on there. Kieran Williams Young and Adam Taylor. Who both separately voice ghosts, simply because I thought it was funny, and also I have been in about 8 separate sketches for that.
We could talk about this film all night, and and we have. But we should round it up there. Just let people know, Robin, where they can find you on the internet, other than in Fart House sketches.
It's very true. You can find me there. Far too few people have seen it. You won't believe it, but they're actually really, really well made. They're a lot of fun. I do dearly enjoy doing those. But if you're looking for me, you got to act quickly before I go missing for the foreseeable future. After I give you this offer, if you don't take it up, you're not going to find me. I'm not going to come track you down at your house and force you to go underground. I'll just not be there. No, but you can, unfortunately, find me at twitter.com as Real Robin Adams. / Retranimator, which isn't actually a Halloween username. It's just my year-round username. Unfortunately, that site is it's run by the real-life Mr. Melancholy, but I am there. I am also on Instagram as Real Robin Adams, and you can find me on Letterboxd, and you can find my writing at The Geek Show. And you can also watch The Eastern Gospel whenever that plays near you, because it's doing the rounds around the UK currently. Only the occasional place, but if you check my socials, you can find out new places it's popping up. At the time this comes out, I don't know if it'll have happened or not, but it's coming to Reading. That's very cool. So if you were there, because it's practically sold out at the time of recording, hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, As for me, you can find me on Letterboxd. Just search for Graham Williamson. I'm on Instagram at Graham W Films. And you can find me on the Geek Show Patreon, working through the mythology episodes of The X-Files. That's at www.patreon.com/The Geek Show. But in 2 weeks' time, we will be back with our, I mean, it's all Halloween month, but this is our actually released on Halloween special, where Jeff and I talk about John Micklethor in the mighty Rock and Roll Nightmare.
Oh, you're finally doing Rock and Roll Nightmare. I'm surprised I didn't suggest that. I'm still holding you to doing Rat Finker Boo Boo. That will happen at some point in the coming year.
It will be, after Rock and Roll Nightmare, it will be the second film where like the main challenge is finding a stream of it online that doesn't have the riff tracks guys all over it.
So that is very true. Although to be fair, I think Rat Finker Boo Boo is public domain.
So yeah, it'll be a bit easier then.
So it might be a bit easier, yeah.
But until then, that's been your lot from Pop Screen. I've been Graham.
And I've been Robyn.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.